SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California. I came to Save with Conrad because I've heard Conrad talk about how he helps people all the time save money and the best route to go for getting some mortgages and finances done. And having heard so many different testimonials in the past, it made the most sense to go this route. We were in the market for a new house and we wanted to know what we could afford. So we spoke with Steve and then Diane to get through the pre-approval process to see what we could afford. And then once we were able to understand that aspect of it, that was when we were able to shop around for a house to get a mortgage through Save with Conrad. Everybody on the team was great. Everybody really explained everything fully to where it was more in like layman's terms to where I could understand it as someone not in the business or having shopped around for houses too many times. So being able to understand every step of the process and talking with everyone on the team about that was really, really helpful. And it made me feel really confident that I was going the right route. I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. I know that sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, they're based in Alabama. What could they help me with? But I'm out here in California and they were able to square everything away and get things done really quickly, as opposed to sometimes even people out here don't move as quickly as the Save with Conrad team. So everything was really well done, really efficient, and I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I was able to get into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
Well, that's number 212, non-equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR. With the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good, Connie. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. Should have a fun show today. Glad to be back past our technical issues that I am still trying to figure out, but everything seems good. Technically, we're on the air, and so it's good stuff, man. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk to you, and hopefully we'll have a fun show today about Halloween Havoc. It's hard to believe it's been that many years since we.
Right.
Golly. Yeah.
Well, let's get going. Let's talk about our topic at hand today. Of course, in the meantime, be sure to tune in to Collision this Saturday night to hear the voice of wrestling, good old JR. And tickets, as I understand it, are still on sale. AEWTIX.com is where you can pick them up. But this is going to be a fun show. We're talking about Great American Bash 1991. And then I guess technically this might be the first pay-per-view that was advertised for WCW without Ric Flair. And of course we know he missed Great American Bash 1991, but he was advertised for it and he wound up splitting before the show. Did the whole company and organization feel a little different without it being built around the Nature Boy? It felt like that had been a tried and true. I mean, he's always in the title picture, always near or sniffing around the main events.
Yeah.
More often than not, controlling that world title. And now with him out of there, of course, you always say here on the show that wrestling fans like new. Did it feel terribly different for you as an announcer with Ric Flair on the other side?
Yeah, it did. It did. You know, you're so used to seeing Nate in a variety of roles and positions and so forth. It was, to me, it was different because he was a flag bearer. He was the guy, and you know, you're going to automatically miss the guy, and we did, and we still miss Rick in a lot of roles and AEW and so forth and so on. He's a fixture, and so you have to adjust from that. And I think that by and large, we did a decent job of moving past the Flair experience, but to say he was not missed or isn't missed is probably a huge misnomer. So yeah, he's just there. He's just, you can't pass over the fact of what he's accomplished and his contributions to every brand that he was involved in. So hopefully he'll be doing fine, moving forward. He seems to be busy. He seems to be having plenty of irons in the fire. A lot of little projects ongoing. So we wish Rick well, quite frankly. I know he and I are not. I'm fine with him. He's not fine with me, but that's cool. It's just the way that it is. So
When you see him, you'll get a big hug. You know that. That's the Richard way.
you're right.
Let's talk about where we left off. We recently covered, or not too terribly long ago, Clash of the Champions 16, which was Fall Brawl. We've got that in the archives for you to check out, Grilling JR on youtube.com. But this is quite the quote from the Observer on the heels of that show. Sunday on the Jim Ross radio show in Atlanta, Ross announced that Jim Herd had just been named the new president of the National Wrestling Alliance. That announcement probably meant nothing to the listening audience, but what it really meant was that at a meeting in Charlotte on Friday, World Championship Wrestling became the controlling power in the nebulous NWA. By virtue of it, Lex Luger has now been installed as the NWA champion. WCW will again become WCW and use the NWA name as the sanctioning body, and the NWA will be used again on television once again. So yeah, listen, let's talk about that. This was sort of a hokey pokey time in the WCW NWA relationship. By and large, the NWA doesn't really exist the way it used to. WCW has always been the lead dog here because they were on Turner, and that goes back to the Crockett days. Even when they made the big gold belt, they didn't put the letters NWA on there because Crockett wasn't sure, hey, how long am I really going to keep doing this? Well, once the sale to Ted Turner happens, I'm sure that all the NWA folks were thrilled to have the association, but it became a hot button issue when that same big gold belt was now on WWF television. They did not want to be associated with the WWF, and frankly, WCW didn't want that either. So there's a lot of back and forth here, but I don't think many people would have had on their bingo cards 10 years prior. Yeah, Jim Herd, he's going to be the future president of the NWA. What? That would have been a real head scratcher, would it not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And still confusing. Too much politics.
Yes.
Too much politics, in my opinion. And it was just, things got confusing, got muddled in my view. So, yeah, it was interesting times to say the least.
Here's how they got so muddled. Of course, there's a whole, it comes to a head, the circumstances between Ric Flair and WCW, and specifically Jim Herd and Ric Flair. So when Rick's out of there, he's still technically the NWA champion. And the NWA board has a legal counsel named Dennis Guthrie, who, wouldn't you know it, also is Ric Flair's attorney. That board has 7 members, and the voting power is in the hands of those folks: Jim Crockett, Gary Juster, Jim Herd, Larry O'Day from Australia, Steve Rickard Sr., Steve Rickard Jr., both out of New Zealand, and one split vote between Carl and Elliot Murnick. So I guess somehow, some way, these guys get together, they make a vote. But the irony of this whole thing is the NWA's legal counsel, also Ric Flair's legal counsel. This is kind of a mess.
Not kind of a mess. Yeah. That's one way of putting it, Conrad. Kind of a mess.
Let's talk about Jim Crockett here for a minute. We don't hear his name very often in 1991. We do know that by 1993, he's at least kicking the tires on, hey, do I want to, after I've sat out my non-compete, do I want to actually go out and try this thing again? We know that, he at least started to do that, and maybe for whatever reason decided this isn't the right time or place. I think, as I understand it, he pivoted into ice cream of all things. But I'm curious, in this era, 1991, was Crockett a part of anything WCW related that you can recall? Now, I'm not saying David, I'm saying Jimmy.
Yeah, not really, Conrad. Everything was still up in the air in my perspective, and it was still confusing. Who's going to represent this, and who's going to be the champion, and all these things. So it was a little convoluted, to say the least.
Convoluted would be the way you would describe the belt situation. I think everybody agrees they had egg on their face with the idea that Bobby Heenan had the NWA world title on WWF television. Of course, WCW is demanding the belt back from Ric Flair, but Rick is saying, nope, it's mine. I paid a deposit for it and I paid it to the NWA. So when I get my money back plus interest, and of course, WCW is thinking, wait, you didn't give us that money. We don't owe you anything. Well, it turns out WCW couldn't actually go get that belt. It had to be the NWA. So it does feel as if contractually, by the letter of the law, the NWA is going to have to get in bed with WCW in order to regain that belt. And I know that this was a really, really big deal in 1991, but I can't help but feel like, hypothetically, if there were some star who were to be fired by a company and he happened to be in possession of the world title, wouldn't we just go make another one? Who cares?
That's one solution, no doubt about that.
Yeah,
make another belt. It's without sounding disrespectful, the belt is a prop, and we could have easily replaced the belt, but it just kept getting so many cooks in the kitchen. It was a lot of muddy water. It just wasn't a fun time to be in that company because you never knew what was going to happen. It was hard to plan. It's hard to go forward in a productive manner because of all the confusion and the little alliances and so forth. So it was a tough place to work at that point in time because we didn't really know what was next, and that just was the way it was. And it was just, you go to work every day thinking, okay, what's next? What's going to happen now? And and we worked our way through it somehow or another. It was just cumbersome and awkward and kind of displaced in a lot of ways. So it was not a fun time to work there because of the uncertainty of so many things.
Well, let's talk about the new thing that WCW is going to be trying here. We've never discussed this because I'll be honest, until we started researching this show, I don't remember hearing this phrase. We've all heard the phrase booking committee, but Dave would write that the WCW organization has now created a steering committee as opposed to a booking committee. The committee is, quote, responsible for discussing with our director of wrestling operations, Dusty Rhodes, the direction of and emphasis on the various WCW money streams and the priority placed on each one. So the committee, composed of Jim Crockett, Jim Ross, Dusty Rhodes, Terry Allen, which is Magnum TA, Jim Barnett, and Jim Hurd, is there to set the long-term direction and emphasis, and will have weekly meetings. A steering committee. Now, it's almost described as if it is not necessarily to chart the course of what's important on TV, but kind of. But we're also tying revenue to it. And I mean, listen, anytime you can get in one of those meetings, that's the real guts of the business. I understand why you would want to be a part of that, but what can you tell us about the steering committee? Did it have any value? What did it entail?
Well, that's a good question. Is this another grouping of people to help make decisions? It was awkward again. I used that word 2 or 3 times already. So it was very awkward. And, but it was what it was. We had a set of rules that we were given, and a set of criteria that we were given. So there, obviously, we were encouraged to work within those restraints and that scenario. But it was always hard, man. It was always hard because the politics were still deeply involved in the decision making, and sometimes that just doesn't play well. Sometimes it's not smooth. And this was one of those situations where we had a steering committee, which I never got. And it was what it was. I mean, it was another way to get more people involved, more cooks in the kitchen. It was compromised and decision making. And so it was hard. It shouldn't have been as hard as it was. It was not that difficult to figure out, but it was what it was. And we all had the objective to be real, to be, this is what we're doing. And it was hard to manage all that because you couldn't get the politics out of the situation. And that was hard. That was very hard to hurdle. and to maneuver.
Now, Jim, I want to ask you about Jim Herd because I feel like at times he gets a bad rap and some of the criticism is warranted. People say things like, oh, he had never been involved in wrestling. He didn't know what he was doing. And listen, it's hard to argue that he didn't have an incredible resume for wrestling prior to this. However, I do want to give him some props for some of the great things that happened on his watch. We got Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat in that wonderful trilogy. We got Terry Funk coming out of retirement for an incredible series of matches with Ric Flair. Big Van Vader was on his watch. The Steiner brothers rose to prominence on his watch. They had sponsorships with Coors Light, and they had their first tennis shoe deal with Ruse. Those are things that had often eluded wrestling companies to have a beer brand and to have a sneaker deal and those type things. So he did a lot of great things, or a lot of great things happened on his watch rather. But one of the things I got to give him credit for, as silly as maybe a steering committee sounds in hindsight, if he knows that he doesn't know everything, what better way than to get together some of the smartest minds in the industry and create a committee? Like, if he's not strong in the booking, let's get a booking committee. I'm not really sure what I'm doing here with the rest of the other aspects of the business. Let's get a committee together. Leaning on experts, that's kind of a good thing for any manager, no?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But you can't divert yourself from the politics. And a steering committee, a booking committee, a committee of any kind is going to create political issues because you're not going to be able to get everybody on the committee that is beloved or respected by the majority. So it's hard to escape, politics. And politics in pro wrestling in a boardroom type deal or whatever is always dangerous because people get their personal feelings and their feelings for their buddies involved, and it makes it really tough to achieve success and development. There's too many personal issues that people have to deal with. So, but in theory, to get all these minds together, if they were to be objective, is the right way to go, because you get a lot of feedback. If guys are honest and they're not trying to manipulate their own agenda, then I think you're making the right move. It's just so hard to get the committee, for the lack of a better term, a steering committee, whatever you want to call it, booking committee. It's hard for those guys to become objective because they find themselves with a little bit of power and influence. So, but I think in theory, it's a good idea. In practicality, it's really hard to look at this thing objectively. So, and I think that's kind of where we were on this deal. And the basic theory is good. Getting objectivity on that group is challenging, and it's not necessarily good, but it's challenging. So I Herd did do some good things. It's just that I've always believed that you need one guy to be in charge of creative. You need one guy to manage the creative direction of where the company's headed and who's going to be featured. And then when you get along the way, you're trying to determine who's going to be featured and in what way. You've got a scenario where personal politics become deeply involved. So if you're a Flair guy, for example, just using that as an example, you get that's one agenda, that's one political party, so to speak. So it was hard in that regard, I thought, but I thought the idea was on point. But I didn't like the way that the thing was configured.
Well, let's talk about some other politics. It's written in the Observer that One Man Gang's future is in limbo. Apparently on September 13th in Charleston, he refused to do a clean job for PN News. Quote, although he did it in a polite way, as opposed to others who aren't so polite about things. He was told to go home for a few days and think things over. But the last word I've gotten is he isn't expected back. Gang did work the match that night and they had him lose by DQ, but he was sent home after the show. What do you think of that? I mean, clearly PN News is the flavor of the month, and as I understand it, he became a pretty polarizing figure in the
Yeah.
locker room amongst the boys. And I guess One Man Gang, being the veteran, felt like, no, I don't really want to do that. That doesn't work for me, brother, as Hulk Hogan used to say. Was that a hill worth dying on, in your opinion, or was it probably time for him to move on anyway?
It was, well, it might have been time for him to move on. There's no doubt about that. That's arguable, and certainly something to discuss. I believe that the One Man Gang had much more clout and credibility and value than did PN News. Gang was one of the great super heavyweights of all time,
Yes.
without a question. Old George was a dependable and reliable, good guy. I got to know him when he worked for Cowboy in the Mid-South. He was like I said, he was one of the great super heavyweights that I ever worked with. He had some great matches with various guys in Mid-South, the UWF. So I was on the other side of the fence in that deal. I don't think that Gang should have been asked to do the favor for PN News. PN News should have been more than happy to have the booking and go out and have a great match, a head-turning match with this great super heavyweight. Those guys don't grow on trees, and you can't just filter through them. Gang had more time left in on his clock, and so I think that whole booking was reversed. I would have asked PN News. I wouldn't even ask him. Here's your job tonight. Here's what you're booked to do. You're going to put Gang over, and we appreciate your efforts, and move on. But there's always some political bullshit. Somebody's, obviously PN News was on somebody's political favorite list, right? I mean, wouldn't that make sense to you, Conrad? Why else would you have him beat the Gang?
Right.
It wasn't like we had a ton of guys over. So anyhow, I think it was too much to do. Got out of hand. Again, one of those situations where communication was at a shortfall. Not a lot of communication. You just don't send a veteran home because you decide that he's better suited for losing to an up-and-comer. And that's what PN News was an up-and-comer.
Let's talk a little bit about distribution. It's written in the Observer that there are problems with distribution in New York. It feels like this was a constant battle with WCW. We didn't read about these problems as often on the WWF side in the newsletters. Do you think they just had a more robust distribution team? They had a better plan. They had a better strategy. Was WCW just not built for distribution, or what were the problems? I know you worked in some of their distribution sales at different times. What challenges did you see there?
Well, I think that the issue is WWF at the time. They had their only game was wrestling.
Right.
And so they focused on that. And those individuals involved in the decision making of growing the brand distribution wise, their only product they were selling was pro wrestling. However, on the other side of the coin, we had in WCW, those guys that were doing distribution were navigating, they were negotiating, they were leveraging a variety of things, whether it be cartoons or movies, whatever it may be. So, I know we got on, I can't remember. I went there. I think it was Ireland, where, the WCW brand was, we leveraged, I think, CNN or something to get wrestling on, as crazy as that may sound. I think that was in Ireland or UK, someplace over there. I can't recall. This too early in the morning. But nonetheless, that's where that was. And we had a good run with those guys, but everything became more prioritized because of the leadership of the company. All you had to do was get Ted to say, I want wrestling on in blank, blank, and blank, and it would have been done. So that comes back to leadership, WCW leadership, and so forth. So when we finally got a little ammunition there to barter with, like CNN or whatever, cartoons, Hanna-Barbera, whatever it may be, we got a little stronger spot. But it wasn't an easy journey, and so it just took leadership. And that's Mr. Hurd had some challenges there without question.
The Z-Man is going to make the news. He's going to be arrested on a Thursday on misdemeanor battery charges and also possession of marijuana and steroids. He's going to spend the night in jail. And the steroid charge, of course, is a felony in this era. After a hearing on Monday, his bail is going to be set at $36,000. And it's written in the Observer that the company was very supportive of Tom Zink in this situation. Man, that line just sort of jumps off the page at me. What do you remember about Z-Man's legal trouble? And do you recall WCW being supportive? Because it feels like today companies might try to distance themselves from this sort of thing.
Different era, different point in time. I was also surprised to read this morning about the company supporting Z-Man Tom Zink in his legal issues, without a doubt. I just didn't see that. That didn't factor into my brain, because I think he was caught. If I'm not mistaken, there just wasn't a lot of outs. It was everything he was accused of apparently was. I don't know about the physicality aspect, but I do understand the the other parts of this scenario, possession, and those type things. But you're right. Today's climate would not adhere to it. So
was that a political thing? You think he was just in favor with certain members of?
I don't know. It might have been. You could lean that way if you choose to. I don't know how politically connected he was. I don't recall him being overly connected, quite honestly. But he got a break there. He had the company was behind him, and they had a lot of clout in Atlanta with the legal area. Somebody knew somebody always. So I got a DUI there. I'm not proud to say, back in that era, and it was the Turner people helped me none. But I had friends from living there, working there, that helped me out. I got a good lawyer. I got some time served, shall we say. But it was there was no accident involved, no human bodily injuries or anything like that. It's just the fact that I got caught in a traffic stop, and the guys ahead of me were getting checked, and I had been drinking, and you could smell it. So I was on my way home. But anyway, shouldn't have been doing it. There's no justification for it. I'm sorry I did it. I wish I had not. But I lost my driver's license for 6 months while I was there, and nobody said a word.
Oh. Well, there's some great news for a friend of yours, a friend of ours in this era. It's written in the Observer. Cactus Jack signed a contract, I believe, for 1 or 2 years. It wasn't too terribly long before this that he was actually mentioned as being one of the best unknown wrestlers in the world. And now he's going to get a shot back here in WCW. How excited were you to have Mick Foley on the roster here in 1991?
Very, because still the character of the man, the integrity of the human being has not been altered. He's still reliable, dependable, good-hearted, willing to help others, great teammate. And so getting him on that dysfunctional team, I thought at least was going to give us a chance to add a little bit of stability to a paranoid roster. You got a roster that's got people on it that are toward the end of their run. They know it. They don't want to give it up. You got other guys on the roster that are new, that see a chance to work on national television, on TBS, but they're their sense of urgency is there. They're young. They think that time was never going to be repeated, which is not true. So anyway, I was glad that we got Mick, and you want to get more of Mick, more Mick Foley's. There just aren't many of them, but he was the right kind of guy for us, and he still is for any company, no matter what he's doing. I love Mick Foley. He's a good man. He has a good heart, and you know, anytime I can work with Mick or help Mick out in my everyday life, I'm always willing to do so.
Heck yeah. Anybody who meets Mick Foley loves Mick Foley.
Yep.
Steve Austin is already back in action. He dislocated his knee, and a week later he was back at it. Somewhere along the way, Diamond Stud would suffer some sort of leg injury over the weekend. And it's in the Observer here that Big Van Vader hopes to return at the end of October. This is an interesting era for professional wrestling. The WWE is offering opportunity, and you're getting paid strictly on the houses. WCW is still more often than not putting guys on downside guarantees or guaranteed contracts, said differently. And anytime that happened, it would always bring into question the legitimacy of an injury claim. And I don't know that that was always fair, but certainly wrestler brain would have you start to sort of gamify and wonder, hey, is there a way they could be working an angle? I mean, this is an industry that
yes, Conrad, you're right, you little dirty bastard. Of course there was. Guys could take a few weeks off and pull it off without any hitches. You know, it's easy to come up with injury issues. How in the hell do you have any kind of career without having some injuries that linger?
right.
And they linger well enough when you communicate with a regular doctor that he's going to say, "Oh my God, you can't do that. You need to rest. You need time off," and which most doctors would say.
Right.
So yeah, you wonder about the character of the. That's why I made the point about Mick Foley. If Mick Foley said he was hurt and could not function, take it to the bank. It was real. It was honest. It was legit.
Yes.
You can't say that about everybody, because a lot of guys are on the other end of that spectrum. Here's the two places they are. They're either at the top. They're either experienced and you're getting ready to tag out. There's that. Then you got the other young guys who have gotten into the system, and they see that, well, maybe I'm not as good as I need to be. Maybe I'm not in the position that I want to be. And so all of a sudden, that's an issue. And I think that's kind of where we were with some of these guys. We had some guys that are on their way out. We had some guys that are on their way in. The guys that are on their way out knew that there weren't a lot of stops along the way left. And the guys that were new saw that maybe they weren't as good as their evaluation or they thought they were. And all of a sudden, boom, they're on that short train. So it was just hard. We needed balance. We needed more Mick Foleys to come on board and to be rightful members of the team, where you're playing for the team and not for your own agenda. And that's really, really hard to find, if not impossible.
Around this same time, we've heard that One Man Gang is going to be let go. Dick Murdoch and Dick Slater are also both released. What can you tell us about Murdoch and Slater? Why was it time for them to go learn a new hold here in 1991?
Yeah, well, I love those guys. Those are really good workers. It needed to be communicated to them what their role was. And then before the door shut on their way out, they need to understand and agree that that was true. Murdoch and Slater had graduated to becoming mid-card heel tag team. Sometimes talents agree with that assessment, but more often than not, when you got guys that have been on top and have main evented in a lot of different arenas, different territories, it didn't work out that way. They believe that they're still as good as they ever was, and they just weren't. And so that was an issue with Dickie and Slater. They just didn't think there was any drop off, and there was. They're a step or two off, but they are still good enough to participate and contribute to the mid card. Except they didn't believe they were mid carders. So what you got to do is you got to either solve the problem or eliminate it.
Mm.
And so if you can't get them to agree that they're, you know, that you're right, that they do have value, but it's in the mid card. If you can't get them to agree with that, the other alternative is to fish or cut bait. You cut bait and move on. And that's where we were with those guys like that. There were a lot of guys like that. I wish we could have kept them because they could have helped the younger talents learn how to get over.
Hey man, you ever wondered if you could pull off boots with your personal style? Well, you owe it to your feet to pull on a pair of Tecovas. Being confident isn't about being different. It's about being yourself. Well, find comfort in the traditions of the West and confidence from making it your own. Honor the West by leaving your own boot print. Tecovas crafts quality Western boots for everyone, from generational ranchers to lifelong cowboys and even first-time boot buyers like myself. By the way, every one of Tecovas boots are handcrafted with over 200 meticulous steps for broken-in comfort that comes right out of the box. Whether it's a long day or a big night, your Tecovas are built to last and impress. You see, there's no compromise between quality and style. And I have to tell you, I wasn't sure that I could pull these boots off. I wasn't even sure if boots are for me, but I snagged a pair and I wear them to work all the time. They look fantastic. I'm rocking them with my jeans. I even wear them with my dress pants. But my biggest shock was I hooked Dad up with not one pair, but two pair. He wears them all the time. My parents had a pipe burst in their house earlier this year. And one of the things that was damaged was my dad's new pair of Tecovas boots. Like the entire room flooded. Well, Dad set them outside and dried them out. And he's going to still get to use them. They're still fine. But not only that, the insurance adjuster came over and said, "Oh, they messed up your Tecovas. I'll make sure they replace that." Dad got a second pair of Tecovas. I can't make this up. That's a real story. Go right now and get 10% off at tecovas.com/grillingjr when you sign up for email and text. That's 10% off at tecovas.com/grillingjr. That's tecovas.com/grillingjr. That's tecovas.com/grillingjr. Tecovas.com/grillingjr. See site for details. Tecovas. Point your toes west. Let's talk about some WCW TV. Meltzer was pretty critical here. He says WCW TV the past 2 weeks has been more lively than in the recent past, particularly intense with a short Raw with Bobby Eaton and Abdullah the Butcher, with solid chair shots on both sides, ending with Cactus Jack doing the run-in and leaving both Eaton and Rick Steiner laying. On the 24th, Center Stage would see the tapings happen for both the 5th and the 12th. This coming weekend has a Freebird match and a squash when the Enforcers do a run-in, and that sets up an impromptu 3-star match. And Steve Austin would beat Chip the Firebreaker to keep the TV title when Austin would headbutt Chip when he went for a leapfrog. Paulie Dangerously is doing an interview with Abdullah the Butcher and Cactus Jack, where they opened a big box and had a birthday cake for Sting, and they sang happy birthday as they both ate cake. This is a tremendous promo. Such a great time in my fandom. I'll never forget that Cactus Jack promo where he sang happy birthday to Sting. And I think you're pointing out it's not Sting's birthday. And
little details.
And Foley points out, yeah, but I missed Sting's last birthday. And that was in fact Sting's last birthday. What a great line. Super fun. WCW creatively here. It feels like we've turned the notches up here. I mean, let's just run through the talent. Think about this Hall of Fame level of talent here. Bobby Eaton, Abdullah the Butcher, Cactus Jack, Rick Steiner, the Freebirds, the Enforcers, which by the way, Arn Anderson's part of that group, Steve Austin, we said Foley, Paulie Dangerously, Sting. You've got a lot of star power here. But 1991, I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's a down year for WCW and the WWF. I mean, this is the year where once upon a time, Vince McMahon thought he would run, the Olympic Stadium and we would have over 100,000 fans there. Ticket sales are so soft. They move it indoors. That whole Desert Storm thing was a total flop, but man, they're grasping at straws. I mean, I know we've said it before, but wrestling really is cyclical, even when you have all this Hall of Fame talent, right?
Yeah, but they weren't Hall of Fame talents then.
Right.
That's the thing that we have to acknowledge, is that they were not Hall of Fame talents at that time. But we saw, of course, many of us did, and I'm sure most did, to be honest, that we had some stars. It just was going to take some time for them to continue to develop their game and present themselves creatively in the ring, bell to bell, all those things, interviews, as stars. So it just wasn't quite time. We were a little bit ahead of the game there. But you got to say, we had the foundation blocks, maybe more specifically, of a real good locker room. And like the names you named off, gosh almighty, they're phenomenal. And in the after effect, we knew that they were going to be stars, a lot of them. But they just weren't there yet. But I liked where we were going to head. I like the fact of getting younger with in certain ways. It's not everybody was in their 20s, but still they were young as far as their journeys were concerned. And I think that was what was really important.
I'm really excited to talk about some of the other details from this era, but one of the things that really jumped out to me is a report here that says there was an altercation on September 23rd in Dothan, Alabama, at syndicated tapings, where Luger beat up Dustin Rhodes, and they replayed it. And I got to thinking, man, I kind of forget that Dustin was here in 1991.
Yeah, he's a pup.
And he is indeed a pup. And, we know that ultimately he's going to wind up leaving the company. There was that uncensored, we're going to fight on the back of a moving semi truck trailer gimmick with Barry Darso, and we were told not to bleed, but the agent told us to bleed, so we did what the agent said, and we both wound up fired. He would become Goldust, and that created such a huge opportunity for him. Yep. But I can't help but wonder, like, the natural Dustin Rhodes to be that good, that young, with that height, and just, for lack of a better word, natural given ring talent. Like, he had timing and so many of the other variables that it feels like people would just heap or loving adjectives that people would heap on Barry Windham. They don't always really stick with Dustin here, and it feels like there was a glass ceiling in place. And I want to ask a question here as respectfully as I can. I know that he got the gig because of his last name, but do you think that his last name maybe created a glass ceiling? Politically, he was only ever going to be able to go so far because there was some underlying issues with this talent or this part of the office or that part of the office with his father, Dusty.
Yeah, of course. It's inevitable. Politics, personalities come into play. So Dustin was a really early developer, but he was still a kid, and kids make mistakes. Dustin didn't become what he wanted to be, and that was a main event level guy, making main event money until he found Goldust.
Right.
And he made Goldust his own entity. And I've always admired him for that, because it was such a departure from what Dusty was. But if you go back and look at the Natural was a younger version of Dusty. The American Dream, the son of the American Dream, the grandson of the plumber, blah, blah, blah. So I think that moving to WWE and becoming Goldust when it happened was exactly what Dustin Rhodes needed. And then, of course, since he's become a hell of a hand, and he's still in his 50s, has great matches when he's booked.
Yes.
He's got a wrestling school that, well, one thing's for sure. If you're out there listening and you want to find out where you stand, or your skill set stands in the big picture, he's got a great school. And so it's just all about timing. And the timing was not right for the Natural. The Natural, like I said, was so much like Dusty that it was too close. But Goldust was way on the other side, and it worked.
It really is one of those great what ifs to me. Like, what if his last name wasn't Rhodes? What was his ceiling have been here in WCW? Could he have been in the title picture soon after this? It didn't happen, but man, he made his own way in Goldust, and what an iconic character people will never forget.
Right. Yeah. It was perfect for him. It worked. He made it work.
Yes, he did. With anybody else, that thing could have lasted a month, but he made it work.
He sure did.
Meltzer would report there's some issues with Paulie Dangerously. In a story we don't have full details on at press time, Paulie Dangerously was suspended indefinitely by WCW on Monday morning and missed the WCW TV tapings on October 7th at Center Stage in Atlanta. The suspension, said to be with pay, covers all activities related to the company. Dangerously is under an announcing contract expected to be in the $125,000 to $150,000 per year range, and that expires on April 1st, 1992. And it's no secret within wrestling that the WCW steering committee wanted to change his role from announcer back to manager. Dangerously didn't want the role change unless they were going to make new financial deals, since it involved traveling and because his contract specifically called for added money for house show dates. However, from all accounts, this suspension had nothing to do with money or changes in the role. Do you remember what this suspension was about?
I have a hard time believing it wasn't about money in some shape, form, or fashion.
That's right.
Quite frankly, asking a guy to go back on the road on a regular basis should come with additional compensation.
Yes.
And I don't know, all those issues seem to burden Paul in his entire WCW run was cash. I was perfectly happy to work with Paul as a broadcaster. I thought he was evolving into somebody really, really good, very talented. I think maybe the role was undervalued and underappreciated, but in any event, he was on his way to becoming the best TV color analyst in the game. And I'm not so sure that if Heyman were to step back into that role today, he could still do it. So I thought he was in the right as far as, if you're going to have me do more work, you need to pay me more. Now, what that more equals, I don't know. But certainly, if you're going to ask a guy to go back on the road, travel, go through the airports, check in the hotels, handle travel, blah, 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 you should expect to pay him a few more bucks. And Paul was a very shrewd businessman in that regard. He knew what his worth was. But there's another situation where we have arguably the best color guy in the business evolving on our watch, but we screw it up. Let's make it more complicated. Let's dirty the water. And that's kind of what happened. Just leave it alone. He and I were doing fine, I thought. And I might be egocentric enough to say, well, of course you're going to say that, JR. But I thought Heyman and JR had a nice little, we had a nice chemistry. He knew how to piss me off, to get me fired up, and I him. So I enjoyed working with Paul. He was smart. You could tell he had something big was going to happen in his wrestling career. And of course we see that now, where he's very involved in WWE.
Oh yeah.
And I suggest he's probably more involved in creative than we know.
Well, you got to think he's super involved in his guys' stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what could have been. Man, this is a story that if this would have happened, would have been incredible. Dave would write about it in the Observer. Apparently, there was a deal struck between WCW and Jerry Jarrett, which would have resulted in a title unification match with Lex Luger and Jerry Lawler. The National Wrestling Alliance name was going to be reintroduced as the supposed leading world heavyweight title, but not until the Luger and Lawler match took place. The company was working legally on regaining possession of the old NWA world title belt that Ric Flair has been using on TV. And apparently, if the belt could be regained legally, which is still very much in question, the Luger Lawler winner would have gotten that belt. Apparently, there was an attempt at a strike back against the World Wrestling Federation, which seemingly had the dream match to settle the so-called real world title situation between Hulk Hogan, and Ric Flair matches that are obviously and clearly the focal point of American pro wrestling right now to both WCW and WWF fans. Anyway, the storyline would be something to the effect of Luger challenging all world title claimants. Of course, neither Hogan, Flair, or whomever may wind up holding a title in the WWF would respond, but Lawler would be the only world champion who would respond, and they'd market a match or a series of matches to determine who would call themselves the real world champion and introduce the new NWA name, crowning the new champion. The angle to start this scenario was supposed to be shot at television tapings on November 11th in Memphis. And then he would write later, over the past few days, WCW postponed the November 11th taping in Memphis, and then Jarrett canceled the entire scenario.
There you go.
Apparently claiming that word had leaked out in wrestling. As WCW officials were saying Monday night, the Friends of Dangerously were confirming the story was given out that Dangerously told Eddie Gilbert, and somehow this caused Jarrett to feel that now too many people knew. Since he was used to being part of all these angles and being secretive, and he's from the old school, Jarrett backed out on the deal.
Don't blame me.
At least that's how the story goes. Dangerously was then suspended for the remainder of his contract. So this would have been really fun. I love the idea of Jerry Lawler and Lex Luger hooking it up in 1991, directly opposite the Flair Hogan thing for the real world champion. That could have been fun, especially if they in fact had the big gold belt. It would have been really cool. Hypothetically, even if for a brief moment, Lawler had that NWA world title, the big gold belt. They had been trying to do that with Jerry Lawler going back to the Crockett days in 86. And I'm sure years before that, but when Crockett started co-promoting in 85, man, everybody was chomping at the bit in Memphis. Let's get it on Lawler. Jerry sees the opportunity, but then thinks, damn it, too many people know. And I guess fingers are pointed at Paul Heyman for that.
Yeah,
you remember hearing about this discussion?
Vaguely. Yeah, I vaguely remember now they're talking about it. But, Heyman could get blamed for a lot of stuff because he talked a lot. And he had a lot of behind the scenes, dealings apparently or supposedly. So, and Paul liked that era. He liked that particular arena, all the behind the scenes stuff and what was going on. And he was close to Eddie Gilbert. So I could see them being together on some of these issues without question. So, but I don't blame Jerry Jarrett. The idea was good, and it might have drawn some money. It might have solidified the championship because at that time, in all due respect, the NWA title meant very little.
Yeah.
Because the NWA meant very little. So I applaud Jerry Jarrett's convictions. He wanted to do it the right way, and the right way just happened to be his way. No big deal. So and the only way you get on the other side of that is if you have a political issue. You're in the other party. You're across the aisle. And I think that's kind of where Jerry didn't want to be. He didn't want to be across the aisle. He wanted to be in front of the equation. So I don't blame Jerry for any of that stuff. Matter of fact, it was a great idea, and I wish you would have had the opportunity to pull it off, see where it would have gone.
Well, of course, Paul E would claim he knew nothing about this, and he didn't know about it until the story blew up. And Meltzer would say maybe that holds water, because only people who would have called your Saturday hotline report would have even had an inclination or a hint or a clue that a Lawler Luger match might be on the horizon. Either way, we see Paulie Dangerously is going to be commentating on a handful of shows here, but those will be his final appearances until further notice. That means you're going to be doing some solo work here, or at least that's the original plan. Like, you always hate it to see one of your pals, one of your buddies, sidelined, whether they're sidelined with pay or not, because, well, it's probably not a good sign for their future. It makes you think about instability and causes worry and concern for, hey, what are they going to do when these paychecks stop? And now there's even more work for you to do. I know you've done 5-man booths and 4-man booths and 3-man booths and 2-man booths, but doing it by yourself, that's less than ideal, is it not?
It is. Yeah. You need somebody out there to play off of and to engage in chat and selling the story, stay on the same page, listen very well to each other, but doing it singularly is more daunting. It's harder because you don't have somebody to answer that question. You can't ask any questions to any degree because it's just you and the other guy. It's just you and nobody else. So yeah, I did some solo work. You know, I always think of how good a job Joey Styles used to do on ECW as the single broadcaster. He did phenomenally well. But it's better to have. You know, it's always been that discussion. Is it better to have a 3-man booth? It seems like in today's world, the 3-man booth is popular with administrators and so forth. So I'm a big. I can do 3 without a problem. When you get past 3, you start shaking the dice. It's hard. It's hard to listen to what everybody's saying, including your headset and everybody else, when there's so many voices being heard in your headset. So 1 is hard. 3 is hard. 2 is perfect, as a rule.
Let's talk a little more about Paulie Dangerously, and then we'll table the Paulie talk. From the Observer, one of Dangerously's legal advisors, Bruce Gold, responded to WCW's official public version of the story with the statement, quote, WCW has announced it has suspended Paulie Dangerously. The reason given for this was the existence of philosophical differences. Mr. Dangerously asserts categorically that there are neither philosophical nor policy differences with management, employees, or agents of WCW, and there are no valid grounds for which WCW can base its unwarranted allegations to break its contractual obligations with Mr. Dangerously. Mr. Dangerously is disturbed that for the second time, WCW is attempting to keep him from doing the job from which he was employed, and he's presently conferring with counsel to determine the appropriate legal response. He is prepared to seek all possible remedies in response to this illegal suspension and damage to his professional reputation and the goodwill associated therewithin. And of course, Dave would write, Jim Herd has the perfect right to replace Dangerously as an announcer if he was unhappy with his on-air performance. Whether anyone else agrees with him or they disagree with him, that is what the position of authority in an entertainment business entails. Boy, that is a Paul E response if I've ever read one. Just a reminder from Dave that, yeah, that's the way it works. You're allowed to have a boss. What did you think of the way Paul went legal or went public with his legal response, if you will?
It was just cumbersome. It was just a mishmash in a lot of ways. Who are you to believe? Who are you not to believe? When will this be resolved? How do we resolve it? You know, again, I looked at it in a kind of personally because it affected my work because Heyman was my partner. And as I have mentioned here previously today, he at that time was arguably the best color TV analyst in the business.
Right.
And for a guy like me, that makes my job easier and makes the work that we both do a lot more effective. So I was not a big favor of this whole these issues. I thought like we were wasting a lot of time. This thing could have been settled by simply communicating at a higher level and honestly and realistically. I didn't find all those elements in place in this matter.
It's announced that Dusty Rhodes is going to be in the corner of Ron Simmons. He's going to be his manager at Halloween Havoc. It's also announced that Mr. Hughes will be barred from ringside. And we've also heard word that Scott Steiner won't be working in the Halloween Havoc show as advertised. Instead, he'll be replaced in the Chamber of Horrors by Big Van Vader, which Meltzer says pretty much goes by who you believe. And some are saying he'll work the match. Others are saying he'll get medical clearance to return in late November. And, well, now the details of this Chamber of Horrors match start to come out around the 19th of the month. All that was announced regarding the Chamber of Horrors match on TV on October 19th is that there will be an electrified cage with instruments of torture. And the only way to win is for all the members of the team to escape from the cage within a prescribed time limit. When the time limit expires, the individuals left in the cage will have to face the yet announced torture. If it doesn't sound like a Jim Hurt idea, I don't know what does. By the way, I do know the torture they'll have to face. Whomever gets left has their choice of getting electrocuted and guaranteed amnesia, or gets the real torture, locked in a room with 4 walls and 1 television, and they have to watch the Great American Bash pay-per-view start to finish.
What a joke. The whole match is a joke. There's no way to sell that shit.
No.
It was horrible. It's amateur booking, and it sounded like compromise booking. So this guy get a piece of his idea, this guy get a piece of that idea, this guy will add this to the equation. It was just a cluster, and it was embarrassing to try to call it.
Well, we know that the pay-per-view, here we come, man. We're going to have to deal with even more issues. You know, this is not too far removed from Ric Flair being the face of this place for as long as people can remember. The "We Want Flair" chants. How do you deal with that, Jim?
Well, you basically have to ignore them, because you don't know where to go with that story. You know, what do you say? You have to try to block it out of your mind as best you can, even though you can hear what many of the fans want. They wanted an H, and we weren't in a position at that point in time to respond to that or to make it happen. It's just more confusion, more of a roadblock here, there, bumps in the road. It was crazy, and it got old, Conrad. It really did. It got old, and there's just so many cooks in the kitchen that wanted a piece of that pie. I'm talking a lot about food here, you know. Hey, speaking of food, while I was in Memphis last week, I had breakfast with the King.
Oh yeah, how was that?
Great. It was great. There's some pictures out there that we took. We went to a little cafe there in downtown Memphis, and it was a place that Lawler told me during the breakfast that Elvis used to go there all the time and eat breakfast. That's not why we went, because I didn't even know we were going to Elvis's spot, but it was really good. You know, old school stuff, you know, breakfast food, fried potatoes, not baked potatoes, fried potatoes, great eggs. Just really, really was a good thing. And we had such a great visit. We were there about 2 hours, and it was fun. Good to see him. He's feeling better. He's getting a little stronger. He's still got some issues with his voice not being as strong as he'd prefer, but he looks good, and he feels pretty good.
How about that gray goatee?
Yeah, he said, I think he's talking about shaving it. I don't know why, but I didn't ask him about his shaving habits. But it was just great to visit with him, and we laughed and had those stories, and you know, did what you expect JR and the King to do. And I just really enjoyed spending the time with him. It seemed like it zoomed by, and all of a sudden we're out of there. So, but it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. You never know at our age, Connie, hell, how many more breakfasts do you have?
Right.
There's no knowledge of that. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. So I was really happy, and I'm glad he's doing well. He's got a lady that comes in and takes care of his place 3 days a week, and that helps him a lot. But he eats out every meal. Doesn't cook. But he's got so many places near where he lives to get good food that's what he does. I tried to tell him, hey, why don't you try Uber Eats or something? Oh, no. Years ago, I tried that and it didn't work, so I'm not going back. That's King. But if I didn't have Uber Eats or things there like Uber Eats, I'd be screwed. So it's just whatever makes you happy. But what makes him happy is what he should do. If he likes going out to breakfast every morning at some place, have at it, man. Go get breakfast. Go get lunch. So, but I like having that food delivered.
All right, guys, let's be serious here for a minute. Life happens fast. You know, one minute you're driving home after work, and the next you see flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Your heart skips, your hands tighten on the wheel, and you start asking yourself, what do I do now? That's when you need someone on your side. And with the Legal Buddy app, you can connect with a local attorney in seconds, not hours, not days, but right when you need the help. Whether it's a DWI, a car accident, a criminal charge, or even just a traffic ticket, the Legal Buddy app puts real legal support right in your pocket. Imagine having an attorney on call, ready to help guide you through some of life's most stressful moments. And hey, by the way, this isn't a call center. This isn't a waiting game. It's direct access to a lawyer who understands your situation and your community, one who can step in right away. Think about it. When trouble knocks, do you want to face it alone? Or would you rather have the confidence of knowing a professional is already on your side? That's the peace of mind that Legal Buddy gives you. And here's how easy it is. Just go download the Legal Buddy app at legalbuddyapp.com. Register today and be sure to use the referral code LEGAL for your chance to win a $250 Amazon gift card. Life is predictable. Accidents happen, tickets happen, mistakes happen. But when they do, you don't have to go through it alone. The Legal Buddy app, always on your side. Download the app today and enter the referral code LEGAL. So let's talk about the pay-per-view. Of course, as we get here, man, we mentioned Barry Windham's in a bad way. He winds up actually smashing his wrist in 4 different places on October 22nd in Columbus, Georgia. So they do an angle on the day of the pay-per-view where we see Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko smash a car door on Barry's hand. I think that was actually Dusty's red Mercedes convertible they were using. But a really fun cover story. I love when anytime we would see horseman-like characters doing an attack in a parking lot. That's what this feels like. You see Dustin jump in and drive Barry off. What did you think of that execution of the angle? I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I did too. It was, you just make the best out of the situation. I mean, obviously you got a broken wrist in multiple places. You got to deal with that. And figure out what do we go next, because the show's got to continue. So I thought the execution was fine. It just was unfortunate timing, but that doesn't have anything to do with execution or the talent or whatever. It just worked out that way, unfortunately. But it's another case, as you mentioned earlier. It didn't seem like Barry Windham could get out of the starting blocks as often as we would have liked, because he's such a talented dude, and you know him not being available was a big blow.
It's pretty amazing to think that Barry has this injury and he's told, hey, you're going to be out 6 months to a year for this. You're going to have surgery. It's not going to be good. But he's still like, well, we might as well get an angle out of it. You can slam the car door on it. It's injured. It's hurt bad. It's broken in 4 places. He still lets them slam the car door on it. Not only that, these wrist injuries are going around here. Ron Simmons, he's now injured. He's got a wrist problem. He's actually wearing a cast until the pay-per-view, takes it off for the pay-per-view, and becomes something of a folk hero in the locker room because he didn't have any prescription pain medication. He's not taking any shots to kill the pain, and he's just ripping the cast off and going to work. Man, that's a man's man right there. People don't talk about that story nearly enough.
That's a Florida State 3-time All-American nose guard. Physicality was not a stranger to Ron Simmons, and he gained a lot of respect in the locker room by coming to work and doing his job when he was hurting and injured. So I'll always have great respect for Ron Simmons for many things, but that his work ethic and his toughness certainly would be 2 of them.
It's pretty amazing when you think about how this pay-per-view comes together. Here we are in Chattanooga, Tennessee for Halloween Havoc 1991. And we've established there's been a lot of an injury bug situation, and maybe we have a silly gimmick match, and maybe there's problems with announcers and he said, she said with the NWA and the title belt. But let's table all of that for a minute. We're in Chattanooga, which is about an hour and change away from Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, that's why we all like working Chattanooga. It was a car trip.
There you go. This pay-per-view has the misfortune of going heads up with the biggest football game of the year on cable. The Giants, who have been Super Bowl contenders, the Redskins, who are Super Bowl champions. Both of these guys are fresh off of Super Bowl opportunities, and they're in the same division, and they're playing heads up against this pay-per-view. And as if that's not bad enough, again, Chattanooga, almost like a suburb of Atlanta, they are running this pay-per-view against the 7th game of the World Series, the final game of the World Series. And this is the season where the Braves went from worst to first, and they're playing the Minnesota Twins for the championship. This is an unimaginably horrible time slot, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't be worse.
Yes.
Couldn't be worse. To share the television audience and then asking that whatever's the shareables, are you ready to pay money to watch wrestling? And the obvious answer was overwhelmingly no.
If you were a sports fan in the area, let's call it Chattanooga and the surrounding area, your football team would have been the Falcons. That's an NFC team. I could see how you don't really care about the Giants and the Redskins.
Right.
But if you are a baseball fan in Chattanooga or the surrounding area, you have been pulling for guys like Dale Murphy and the Braves for so long, and you've watched them on TBS for so long, and they have been so bad for so long, and now they're finally great. They've got great pitching, they've got great hitting, they've got great fielding, and unbelievably, they're in the World Series. Not just game 1, game 7. If the Braves win, they're the world champs. And if they lose, well, we don't want to even roll the dice on spending $30 to watch Lex Luger and Ron Simmons and the rest of the WCW guys. We'll catch up on that on TV another time. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity if you're a long suffering Braves fan, but somehow they pack 8,900 fans in this arena. It's not a huge arena. It's the same building that we would see in your house Final Four, where China would make her debut and we crowned a new world champion in 1997, but still 8,900 fans are there. Granted, a lot of that had to be paper because I think the gate was only $45,000. But the timing of being heads up against game 7 with the Braves in the Braves' backyard.
Could be worse, Conrad. Could not be worse.
Unbelievable.
Glavine, Smoltz, Maddox, all those great pitchers. And the fact you come from nowhere, from worst to first, so to speak, amazing. But there's no way in hell it's going to be successful, the pay-per-view. Can't be. You're going to have a few diehards that's going to buy it. Apparently, we saw that number. It wasn't very good. Lost money. I don't know. I don't know if we've made enough money at the gate to even pay for the rent and the staffing.
It's going to be tough. And it gets even tougher when you realize we're starting with this crazy cage match. Now, I recognize that from a production standpoint, it's going to take more time to set all these gimmicks and apparatuses up. You don't want to just be killing time in the middle of a pay-per-view while all of
killing people.
Yes.
You know.
So we want to put this together up front. But just to be clear, we've got an electrified cage here with an electric chair, and that's our opening match. So here it is. Chamber of Horrors. We've got Sting teaming with Elegante and Rick and Scott Steiner. You got 3 super over baby faces and, well, the largest wrestler there ever was, Elegante. Taking on Cactus Jack and Abdullah the Butcher and Big Van Vader and the Diamond Stud, who we know is going to go on to be Razor Ramon and Scott Hall. I mean, just one Hall of Famer after another, and Elegante. They got 12 minutes and 36 seconds. Abdullah the Butcher, Cactus Jack, and Sting, they all bleed. Cactus Jack is bleeding a lot. As silly as this sounds, the switch to turn on the electric chair just keeps falling on its own. We've not done enough quality control here. We've got the referee running around with a stupid camera helmet. He's got a camera on his head. We're calling it the referee. Yeah,
Jesus.
That didn't last long.
Jesus Christ.
And the finish would see Steiner pull a reversal on Abdullah the Butcher to get him in the chair. Cactus pulls the switch thinking that Steiner was going in, and now we have an explosion. Now, Abdullah the Butcher in the opening match here has just been electrocuted live on pay-per-view. He's supposed to do a stretcher job and sell the explosion because, well, you know, he was just electrocuted. That's how they kill people in Texas. But of course, he doesn't do a stretcher job because he doesn't want to. So instead, he beats up all the ghouls. That's right, the ghouls. I don't know why there are fucking ghouls here. I just know they're here, and Abdullah beats them up.
Oh, hey, that time of the year, Conrad, in Chattanooga, it's ghoul season.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
My parents wouldn't let me go to that area at this time of year. So now I know why. I find it funny. One man gang won't do a job for P and News, hit the bricks. Abdullah the Butcher won't sell electrocution. He won't sell the electric chair. Just fine.
It's not just fine. It's a runaway train.
Yeah.
You know, the booking and the World Series and the conflicts and scheduling and so forth are what they are. But for a talent not to follow the script and do what they're asked to do and to do what they're being paid to do is unacceptable. And you know, it just shows you that there was just what people use now, institutional control.
Yes.
There was none. And I felt bad for the guys that were willing to play team ball, but you know, it didn't. That whole thing was a joke. That match was a joke. I don't disagree with it. Put it on first and getting the taste out of our mouth so that we can continue with the show. I don't have a problem with that. But boy, howdy, it was a struggle. But I'm glad they put it on first to get the damn thing out of the way.
Well, that's what's interesting to me. Now, I'll admit, I don't know shit about wrestling. You forgot about wrestling, more about wrestling than I'll ever know. But I've always been under the impression you don't want people bleeding in the first match because it's like, where do we go from here? And after we've seen everybody bleeding and all these weapons and an actual electrocution, a doggone electric chair, now let's see some headlock takeovers in match 2. That's a little weird, isn't it?
Yeah, transitions were tough. But still, I applaud the fact we're doing this, getting this match on first, because we all believed it was going to suck.
Yes.
No matter how hard the talents were working to get it over, we all knew, or at least we thought we knew, it was going to suck. The best thing that could happen is it surprises us, and it's better than we thought it was going to be. But not knowing all those things and not knowing the answers to all these unknown questions, it made sense to go on first with this crazy match. At least it did to me.
Speaking of a crazy match, this was an actual match on pay-per-view. P and News teaming with Big Josh, who we know is going to go on to be Doink. And they're going to take on the Creatures. And I know what you're saying to yourself. Self, who the hell are the Creatures? Well, it's Johnny Rich and Joey Maggs. Somehow, some way, P and News and Big Josh get the win. But this was a match on pay-per-view. It gets a star and a quarter. Up next, we get 2 incredible performers seemingly lost in a sea of what the fuck. It's Bobby Eaton and Terrence Taylor, who go 15 minutes and 41 seconds. My man, Bobby Eaton, pulls off the win with the Alabama Jam. Of course, Terry Taylor comes out dressed like a poor man's $1 million man. He's got Terry Runnels with him. She is calling herself Alexandra York. I like the concept of this. I loved her as a manager.
Yeah.
I think the world of these two guys as in-ring performers. And there's a lot of great stuff in this. This is the sleeper match of the whole show. 3.5 stars. This might actually be Terry Taylor's best ever pay-per-view match.
Yeah, it might be.
But just another great day at the office. I mean, if you had a chance to see those guys in their prime, you were in for a real treat, and this was a great example of that.
I agree with that, Conrad. You know, Terry was perfect for that role, and a very underrated manager, for lack of a better term. Looked great, fit the part, always in great shape. She became a student of the game, which can be a blessing or a curse. But I like that presentation. And I think when you get the combination of a Bobby Eaton wrestling Terry Taylor, you shouldn't have any issues. You should have a good match. And Terry also added to that equation. So it was a it was surprisingly good, and I was happy for everybody involved.
Next up, we get a very young Johnny B. Bad wrestling Jimmy Garvin. Michael Hayes is going to be here and his arm in a sling in the corner. And you see he's wearing Braves gear on the way to the ring. They want to make sure that the fans know, hey, we're baby faces. Johnny B. Bad, though, actually winds up breaking his nose doing a sunset flip off the top rope, which might be one of the dumbest moves in the history of wrestling. I'm not saying it wasn't a cool move, but I am saying logically, why would I throw myself off the top rope and land on my back? Like if someone slammed me that way off the top rope, I'd have to sell it like I was dying. But if I do it to myself and grab the guy's legs on the way down, well, now it's a move for me. I don't know. I can't really figure that out.
How much time do you think that the agents gave Johnny B. Bad in his match preparation? You think they all really gave a shit?
No,
I don't.
No.
If they did care, then they wouldn't have done that spot.
Well, and here's the thing too, Johnny B. Bad, to your point, is so new. I don't think people think about this, but he's like less than 2 years into his wrestling experience at this point.
All right.
And he's on pay-per-view here. And Meltzer would say Bad showed a lot of improvement and took great bumps. Although he showed he was green in a lot of ways, as well he should. Johnny B. Bad gets the win though. It's the left hook. It's the kiss that don't miss. That gets the pin. Michael Hayes is going to deck Peanut Head after the match, 2 3/4 stars.
Hadn't heard that in a long time.
And next up, we got Steve Austin working with Dustin Rhodes for the TV title. Lots of great wrestling in this one. You see Lady Blossom coming to the ring with Steve Austin. And how about Dustin, man? Dustin is this is a big opportunity for him to be in a title match on TV on a pay-per-view like this. But they go to a draw. They go the full 15 minutes. 3 1/4 stars. It feels like draws were much more common in this era than they are today. Why do you think draws are so passe now in 2020?
Because I think the audience largely believes they're boring, and it's a shortcut. Why couldn't you give us a finish? That is a finish. A draw, time limit draw, is a finish. It's just not the accepted finish that people prefer to indulge. I don't think that match needed double juice, and they had double juice in the match, but they had a hell of a 15-minute draw.
I know that a lot of my other co-hosts, boy, they like to give Dave Meltzer a lot of shit on our podcasts, and I hate that sometimes. Sometimes I think they're justified, and sometimes I think they protest a little too much. However, got to give Dave some props here. This is from October of 91. October of 91, and he wrote here in the recap of this match, if there is anyone in the United States with the potential to be the next Ric Flair as a total all-around performer, it's Austin, because he's so advanced and has an incredible presence and ability for just 2 years in the business. Rhodes isn't too far behind him either. Dave saw that shit in 1991. Kudos to Dave.
Yeah, a lot of us, I said something along those lines positively about Austin back in this era, because if you're a student of the game, which Meltzer is, I consider myself a student of the game. It was so obvious. It was just etched on a big screen. This guy's going to be a star. I think the only other guy said that real early was Rock about it being a blue chipper.
Yep, I've heard a guy say that.
Yeah, before. So I just I don't think it was I'm not knocking Dave at all. He's right. But several of us on the quote unquote inside believed that we had greatness before our eyes that was evolving. And so but that was a fun match. Like I said, 15 minutes, told a great story. Not sure they needed double juice.
Let's talk about the next match here. We talked about 2 of the all-time greats, and now 2 that maybe nobody would have predicted would be all-time greats coming up next in match number 6. Bill Kazmaier, who was a heck of a nice guy. I met him in this era at a some sort of meet and greet opportunity. He was booked for some appearance in Montgomery, and my parents took me to meet him, and he did some sort of feat of strength. I don't know. He pulled a tractor trailer or something with his teeth. I mean, it was impressive.
Yeah.
And they did a really nice job trying to position him. You see him, if you're watching with us along on YouTube, he's carrying a globe on his back like Atlas. I mean, it really is a cool look. He was legitimate. And we're going to contrast that with his opponent, Oz. Of course, we know this is going to go on to be Kevin Nash, one half of the Outsiders, and Diesel, the WWF World Champion, and bona fide Hall of Famer in every respect and regard. But Oz, yeah. Kaz gets the win with the torture rack. They go 3 minutes and 58 seconds. Meltzer would say these guys could have had the worst match in the history of WCW pay-per-views, but the company didn't allow enough time. It could have been much worse than it was, but that's still no reason for it being here in the first place. Negative half a star. We know that Kevin Nash is very early in his wrestling career. So is Kaz Meyer. Man, like whoever put this together, again, what the hell do I know about wrestling? Wouldn't you put the green guys with a veteran to just make this thing passable? Putting two green guys together, I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's questionable booking, obviously.
Yeah.
Neither guy was ready. You know, they were one-dimensional at that early stage of their careers. You're right about Kazmaier. He's a nice man.
Yes.
Good guy. And of course, the success that Kevin Nash had compared to Kazmaier is not even on the charts. I mean, Nash became a bona fide global superstar. And I've always pulled for Kevin. You know, he was on my radio show that we featured these studio sessions from time to time. He was one of my regular guests at WSB Radio in Atlanta. So I've always been in Kevin's corner, but I'm with you. I would have, if you want to give him exposure, then you put him in a position to win. And we didn't do that. I don't know why. It's just silly. Didn't make any sense to me.
Well, another thing that maybe didn't make sense to you is the push for Van Hammer. He's going to pin Doug Summers here in 1 minute and 12 seconds with a slingshot suplex. Meltzer, not a fan, says Hammer only missed 3 of the 5 moves he tried. -1 star. Who was so high on Van Hammer? Is that a Herd push? What do you think?
Yeah, Herd and TVS in general, they just thought putting a guitar and some rock music behind a guy was a giant step to the road to success. Had a great look, decent kid, but his skill set was very dubious at that time. So, but he had enough supporters to keep him on television for a good while.
All right, it's time for us to brag about JR's wiener. Okay, not really, but it is going to be worth bragging about for you because they've got a brand new product at Blue Chew. It's called Blue Chew Max, and think of it as like the hot tag for your wiener. No, seriously, it combines the active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis, but all into one chewable. This is a tag team combination that acts fast and truly lasts. Think of them as the tag team specialist. There's your real Midnight Express in the bedroom. Guys, be ready whenever she needs it and get your first month of Blue Chew free. You see, great sex is just a few clicks away. You sign up at BlueChew.com, you consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door, and the best part is it's all done online. Now that means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use our promo code JR. Just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code JR. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Next up, we've got a match that on paper feels like it should have been fantastic. Maybe it was a bit of a miss, according to Meltzer. Brian Pillman and Richard Morton. That's right, Ricky Morton, but now he's a heel. He's got Alexander York with him. And they're here to become the first WCW light heavyweight champion. Meltzer would say, Pillman must not have recovered from his injuries. This match should have been a fast-paced, high-flying signature match to establish the division, similar to the great match that Pillman had with Brad Armstrong at the Clash, but it wasn't at all and was the biggest disappointment on the show. Pillman won with the flying body press off the top rope in 12 minutes and 44 seconds. So this is the first time we're going to have a light heavyweight champion. This, of course, is the precursor to the cruiserweight championship we would see years later.
Yeah.
But Pillman this was his first match back. He had torn a muscle, I guess, in his shoulder, and was just not himself here. Maybe Meltzer thinks. Probably not the outing they wanted, but man, we got the right guy with the belt, did we not?
Well, I think so, but that belt was not a real popular decision. A lot of the old school guys thought we were just convoluting the championship scene. I don't think that, but I knew in my heart, unfortunately, the company was not going to be committed to the junior heavyweight thing or the light heavyweight thing or whatever. And, and a lot of the talents thought it was the kiss of death to be anointed with that championship.
Just because it says light heavyweight?
Yeah. And as it worked out, they were right. It never got over. It was a waste of TV time. Now, as far as the talents in the match are concerned, no issue there at all. But I just knew that the future of the title itself was not going to be well served.
Let's talk a little bit about Brian Pillman Jr. here for a minute. He's recently, as we're recording this, debuted on NXT television, and they're calling him Lexus King. I don't know, man. Like, I know we both think a lot of Brian Pillman Jr. the person.
Yeah.
But calling him something else sort of caught me off guard. And I recognize that that's sort of the WWE way. But they are acknowledging who his dad is, but using a different name. What do you think of that?
I was a little surprised. It's still too new for me to make a judgment call on. I was a little surprised and don't know the significance of the name. I do know that in pro wrestling, the happy homecomings can always be where Brian Jr. Takes his name back.
Yes.
And his father's memory or something. But, we'll see. But there's options there. I'm not wild about the name, but, I'm sure they don't give a shit about what I'm wild about or I'm not, and I don't blame them. But I thought the name was a little unique. Maybe it's going to work. We got to give it time.
Yes. Well said. We got to give it time, and I hope it works too. Eventually, we see the Halloween Phantom here. He's going to reveal himself to be Rick Rude and destroy Tom Zink. It's a pretty big deal to have Rick Rude here in WCW. And there you see Paul Heyman and Medusa, who had just been wrestling on TV as a babyface against Leilani Kai. Now here she is being introduced, paired with the ultimate heel and Rick Rude, fresh off of his WWE run, and with Paul Heyman. And you see in the back that handsome Dracula figure. That's Eric Bischoff. Man, this is a big deal to have Rick Rude. I know that you spent time with him through the various different territories, but he's off an incredible run with Vince. This is a major gain for WCW, is it not?
Big gain. You always worry, without sounding overly cynical. Can we have as much success with Rick as Vince did?
Right.
And that's always the question that looms out there. And so, but getting Rick Rude on our roster was huge, and it worked out really, really well.
Next up, we've got the Enforcers. That's Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko. They're the tag team champs, and unfortunately, they're wrestling Chip the Firebreaker and Todd Champion. These are the U.S. tag team champs. They have an interesting look. It feels like they're straight out of the 80s. Maybe they could have been a part of a Chippendale troupe. Meltzer would say the Patriots have a lot of negative charisma. Everyone tried, but Todd has this knack of never being in the right place at the right time. The Enforcers were pretty much the faces here. When Larry Zbyszko is a face, something is amiss. I really enjoyed the look of the Patriots, but even as a kid, I was like, well, they're not very good.
Yeah.
Of course, Arn and Larry Zbyszko pick up the win here. What do you think? Was this more of just a styles clash? You got real veterans versus some pretty green fellows.
It was an enhancement match, Conrad.
Yeah,
that's what it was. It was a TV match, That's all. That's what that was. The Firebreaker and Chip and all that stuff. They weren't ready for prime time. They worked hard. They're good kids, but they weren't ready. On a scale of what did they rate with Arn and Larry, it wasn't even close. So to me, it was more of an enhancement match than it was a pay-per-view like main event.
Here we go. It's time for our main event. We've got Lex Luger and Ron Simmons. Now, as a reminder, Luger is our champ. He's got Mr. Hughes and Harley Race with him. He is a heel now, just merely by association with Hughes and Harley Race. Meanwhile, he's taking on Ron Simmons, who has Dusty Rhodes in his corner. So if you weren't sure if you should cheer Ron, now you know, because Dusty's there. The first fall is slow, but Ron gets the win. 4 minutes and 52 seconds on the first fall, because it is a 2 out of 3 falls match. A spine buster does it, and Luger is going to continue to sell the back. And Meltzer is very complimentary, saying the announcing of this match was great in trying to get the story across. Luger wins the second fall by DQ, and it looks like they're going to take a double bump over the top rope. Either way, it winds up being a DQ, so now it's one apiece. And the third fall would see Luger bleeding hard way under the eye. Ron's going to make a big comeback and get down in a 3-point stance, and that's what he's known to do. Tackles Luger, who moves, and then Simmons winds up hitting the post. Luger then hits him with his pile driver, which in this era is his finish. So Luger is not using a torture rack here. He used a pile driver to win the title with Barry Windham at the Great American Bash. We saw the footage of Harley Race saying pile driver, pile driver, pile driver, and he finally hit it. And that's how we finished the pay-per-view. A heel winning the main event on a pay-per-view clean with his finish. No screw jobs during the entire card. Meltzer's blown away that this is even possible when it's booked by Dusty Rhodes. He liked the match too. He gave it 3.5 stars, but we're sending fans home on a downer. The heel won. And it almost makes me think, in hindsight, and I know why you liked the way it was, should we have started the show with the world title match, have the heel retain, and then let's electrocute Abdullah and send them home happy with the big explosion? You guys won.
You could have. Obviously, yeah, sure you could have. And that's a very viable suggestion. I think they did it the right way because of the unknown entity. We're judging this after seeing the Abdullah debacle. So, but we didn't know how good or bad it was going to be. So, but what you suggest would have worked. I don't have a big issue. I would never make an issue that in the main event of a pay-per-view, it's always got to be a babyface finish. I think that makes it too predictable and too hard for the talents to get their stuff over.
Well, let's do a few questions here, but before we do, I want to tell you that the Observer readers, the readers of the Observer, gave it a 58.9% thumbs up. What'd you think, Jim, of this show? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle?
Well, if you do like they do on Olympic judging, you take out the high score and the low score, and what you got. I thought it was pretty good, better than I thought it was going to be before the show started. But that's because, again, I like the fact we opened up with that gimmick match, got it out of the way, and started moving on. And along the way, we had some pretty solid wrestling matches. It's just a little different because of the order and the progression of it. So, but I thought the show was pretty decent based on what my preconceived notions were, which were not, my expectations were not high.
Let me ask you this. When you see a babyface like Ron Simmons coming into the match here and then lose clean to the heel's finish, does that sort of neuter the babyface? I mean, I know that we know he's going to get another bite at the apple. He's going to beat Vader. He's going to be world champ. That's a ways away at this point. Could we have gone with it here, or to protect Ron, should we have had some more shenanigans, do you think?
I just think the process of getting Ron over was still ongoing, to be honest with you.
Timing wasn't right.
No.
I see.
Timing wasn't right. when he beat Vader in Baltimore. That was right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So just timing is everything. And but I didn't have, I watched this match again. It's just, they had a solid match. They
Yes.
told a pretty decent little story.
Yes. I'm curious what you think about Lex Luger. Like, why was he hard to draw with here? Is this a function of what I would call like the Joe Montana effect? Because like with Steve Young was the person to succeed Joe Montana, those shoes were incredibly hard to fill. And even once he won a Super Bowl, 49er fans, it was such a big shadow cast by Joe Montana. That feels like the void and the hole that was left there by Ric Flair. It's not even really Luger's fault, in my opinion. It's whoever's in that spot. Fans aren't going to be happy. They wanted Flair, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I think so. Lex just had a hard time connecting with a big portion of the audience. I don't know if it was aptitude. I don't know if it was his aptitude and how he related to the fans. I don't know that. It just never clicked in the way that you would think it would, because how he looked, how he represented, the exposure that he got, all those things still didn't get him over. And sometimes, you just got to be protected and put in the right role. And I don't know that we ever in the business ever got Lex in the total right role.
Eric has a great question. He says, Jim, how would you rank the Chamber of Horrors match? Is it one of your top 5 worst gimmick matches of all time? And if not, what are some others that come to mind?
No, that's a good one. There's a stop there. I don't need to be punished anymore. Having to remember it. No, it was up there. It was pretty damn bad. I'm sure if I go back and researched it and looked at it, I could pick out another match or 2 or 3 after almost 50 years in the business that would tell you that it wasn't good. So, but that's all. I'll leave it there. It wasn't good, and I didn't enjoy it whatsoever.
By the way, if your business targets men 25 to 54 years old, there's no better place to advertise than right here with us on Grilling JR. You've heard us do some of the same ads for the same companies for years. Now, why is that? Because it really works. With our super targeted audience, there's very little waste. So go right now to advertisewithjr.com to find out more about advertising here on Grilling JR. Also love to have your social interaction. He is at JR's BBQ on Twitter and at Jim Ross BBQ on Instagram. You can also find our show handles across all the platforms at JR Grilling on Twitter and Instagram, and Grilling JR over on Facebook. The easiest, cheapest, best way to support the show is to follow us and hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment, throw us a thumbs up over at Grilling JR on YouTube.com. And we've got a ton of fun swag and merch available for you now over at grillingjrtees.com. But if you want to be, as a friend of mine says, in a reorder situation, can I recommend the all-purpose seasoning? I ate supper yesterday at 10 o'clock at night. It was popcorn. I didn't get to eat lunch until like 4 o'clock. My day was super jammed up. I sat at my favorite Mexican restaurant counter. And then at 10 o'clock, I was like, damn, dude, I'm hungry. I don't know what to do. Aha. Orville Redenbacher and a little all-purpose seasoning got together to make the ultimate tag team for me last night at 10 o'clock. Try it yourself. And I know what you're thinking. Aren't you supposed to put that on meat? Dude, it's great on eggs. It's great on pork. It's great on steak. It's great on chicken. It's great on popcorn. You're absolutely going to love it. All my friends who are hot sauce users are addicted to the red ass JR's red ass hot sauce. They've also got 2 different types of barbecue sauce. You got your hot and your original. I prefer the original. You got the Chipotle ketchup, the main event mustard. There's something for everybody, Jim. What have you been seeing flying off the shelves the most at jrsbbq.com?
Well, as you mentioned, the JR's Red Ass Hot Sauce is building a nice reputation. It's got a unique taste. It's not overpowering, but it's damn sure good. And people continue to figure out new ways to eat our mustard. It's a jalapeno honey mustard. It's got a little personality to it. It's got, I think, 1 gram of sugar. So we're aware of those type things. So business has been really good too. We do see that sometimes shipping is an issue. That's not on our end, but we're going to correct the problems if we can. So, but the mustard, and then of course our old go-to is this all-purpose seasoning, as you mentioned, on the popcorn. My granddaughters told me about that a long time ago, that the grandpa we figured out another way to use the seasoning. So it's got a lot of uses. It's a matter of your creativity. We'd love to hear how you use JR's, what dishes you've created, how you season certain things with our products. It's just fun to hear and fun to try.
Let me encourage you to go right now to jrsbbq.com. I hate to put your business on Front Street here and out you, but folks, Jim and his crew have woefully underpriced some autograph stuff, and you need to go snatch it up right now. They've only got a handful of action figures that are left. They're under $70 and they're autographed. If you meet JR and you buy the figure on your own, they cost more than that. Not only that, let me mention this. If you spend $20, you get a free signed Topps card. Throw that in your Google machine. Over on eBay right now, I'm looking at a 2011 Topps card autographed by Jim Ross, and it's to a dude's name, and it's $100. And they're just giving it to you free. It's absolutely free. These deals are too good to be true. They got to get some new mathematicians over at jrsbbq.com. They're giving away the stuff. I might hang up and go buy all the shit myself. It's jrsbbq.com. You're going to get a great product. You're going to get something that you and the family can enjoy. And you got something you can put on a shelf. And then someday when a rainy day comes around, cash it in. This is the gift that keeps on giving. I don't know why he's doing it, but he's doing it. He's giving it away at jrsbbq.com. Go take a look. You'll be glad you did. We'll see you soon right here on Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.